Good day everyone, welcome to this tutorial where we will be drawing a floor plan using Blender. So this is the result of myself spending almost an entire weekend trying to find software and learning how to use it to draw the floor plan of the basement of my house, as I was forced by the commune. So after spending all this time, I decided that it was a good idea to put together what I learned with the purpose of saving the time of people that need or have a similar need, or even myself in the future, because these are things that one easily forgets. Well, the first question is why Blender? I really spent a lot of time trying to find the most suitable software for this task, where we need to draw a floor plan in scale. That is, if one wall is twice as long as the other wall, then on the drawing it should be twice as long as the other wall, right? And there is a lot of or there are a lot of online tools, but they are very limited, and then they store your information somewhere out of your control. Also, there are other products that you can install on your computer, but they require subscriptions or payments. So among free tools, there are the options are few. And of course, if you have access to software like AutoCAD, then that would be much better. But if you want something that is free, that is open source, that stores the information in a format that essentially ensures that you will not lose that information if a certain company that produces software goes bankrupt or something like that, right? And also a program that is flexible and very powerful, then you arrive at Blender, which also has a wide community. So this software is designed for, or it is conceived for 3D design, right? So it's not specifically for this task, and that implies that it will suffer from some limitations, right? So I mean, it's not software for technical drawing, right? So some operations that one performs a lot in technical drawing are not very fast in Blender, or could be faster perhaps, and some operations may even be a little bit tedious, and of course the result may not be perfect, right? But I think that overall it is the best option that somebody, I mean, a human that really doesn't have access to professional software can choose. It's a great option in that sense. So we will start with a brief tour through the main features of Blender, or the main functions. It is remarkable that Blender is a pretty complex tool, and in the beginning it may not be intuitive. So there are rather few things that one can do without checking a tutorial or manual in the beginning. That's why I think it's very valuable to collect this relevant information in this video. And besides what you learn for the floor plan can be used for other purposes, such as for designing some part for a 3D printer, or perhaps to design your house or whatever. So the first thing that we can do is to just create a new file, and we see that the screen is divided in other smaller screens. In the top left of each of these panes or panels, we have a selector that allows us to choose what the corresponding panel displays. So for example, here, if we select this outliner, right? So it is currently displaying properties, but we can yeah, you see the symbol properties is here, right? But we can set it to be the outliner, and therefore, and then it will have the same content that this panel, right? So whenever they tell you the tutorials often talk about the properties panel, so it means this, right? This is the properties panel. And then we can move this. We can also divide it into multiple panels and so on. And the next important thing that one needs to observe is that everything in our scene shows up here. So essentially we have a collection with three objects. One is the camera. You can click this to make it disappear or not. Another one is this cube here, and then there's a source of light. Okay, so the camera is used for rendering purposes. So whenever you have finished the design, you can hit here render image, and you will see what the camera here sees, right? And you see these shadows that are produced by this light source. Observe that we are in object mode, right? So in object mode, we can select each of these three objects that we have in the scene, right? If we want to translate, move these objects, we just can hit here, right? And then we can move it along the axis in this way. Okay. If a shortcut for this is to press G as in grab, then we can move it, but of course we don't lose, we lose control because we have a 2D screen and we are moving it in 3D space. As you can see on the top left of the screen, you see how much it moves in each along each axis. So you see that even that is very difficult to control in the three dimensions, right? So this we can also do rotations and scaling and so on. But if we want to modify the object itself, what we need to do is to enter edit mode. Okay, so once we enter edit mode, we can choose three selection modes here, right? So this is the selection tool, and this is to select vertices, to select edges, and to select faces, right? So everything is made of vertices, edges, and faces, right? So for example, I can select one vertex because I am in this vertex select mode, and I can move it, right? This is very flexible in this regard. Suppose that I want to choose the 3D coordinates of this vertex. So I can make the right panel, this panel show up by pressing the key N on the keyboard, N as in November, and then here we go to item, right? So then we can set these 3D coordinates either with the keyboard or by clicking and dragging. Okay, we can always undo to come back to the initial position. Similarly, we can choose an edge or a face, right, and move it. So for instance, we can move the top facing along this axis, right? Note that the axes are indicated with RGB coloring. So R is X, Y is green, and Z is blue. And we can also do the same with edges. It is also important to learn how to navigate. So if we just use the trackpad, so these are 2 fingers on the trackpad, I think you do something similar with a mouse with the middle button, but I am not sure. That's something that you may want to check. This is on a MacBook. So you have a trackpad. So this is when I use 2 fingers. Another option is to hit the shift button, and then what I have when I use the 2 fingers on the trackpad is a translation. Okay, so rotation and translation. An important skill that we would like to acquire is how to set an object in a specific point, right? So suppose that I want to set this object such that this vertex is exactly on the origin. So what I can do is to just use the vertex selection mode and hit on this vertex. And now I can go to Mesh, Snap, and Cursor to Selected, right? So observe that the cursor that was here, now it is here. This is a 3D, the 3D cursor, and you can control it also in this mode. So after I place the cursor in this corner, right, I can go to I think object, and here in object set origin, and we set the origin to 3D cursor, right? So this is now the origin of the object. Otherwise the origin is by default in the center of mass or the median of the vertex coordinates or something like that. So now that we have the origin here, we can just set the coordinates of the object. Observe that we are in object mode, right? So this is 0, this is 0, and this is 0. We go to the origin, and the object is here. All right, so now we would like to start with the floor plan. The first step is to learn how to create planes. So we would like to, as a first step, I will be using a drawing, an existing drawing from the floor plan. This is a completely optional step, but it is also quite useful to learn. thus we need to learn how to add objects. This observe that here we have a, remember that here we have a collection with these three objects. If we are in object mode and we add a new object, it will create a new object in this list, as you can see here. If you were in edit mode, editing this object, for instance, and you add a plane, then that plane would become part of the object you are editing, right? So remember, if you want separate objects, you need to be in object mode, and you select the collection. So the object is added at the cursor, and then this is what we have. We can place it wherever we want. So we added a plane, but this plane doesn't contain an image. So what we need to do is to first enable the add-on of planes as importing images as planes, and then what we need to do is to go to add to image and images as planes rather than mesh plane, right? So here we can choose a file, and that will be imported as an image. Sorry, I meant that it would be imported as a plane. Okay, so here it is the image. What we need to do is to rotate it because it's on the vertical plane now. So here we see in the we have this object selected, which we can rename using ID data, rename as background. Then we can rotate it here. We can perhaps use 0 degrees here and 0 degrees here. Okay, and now we can see it. At this point of the video, I forgot to say that you also need to select this view here if you want to see the image on the plane that you import, otherwise you will not see it. I repeat this later, but it's important at this point. The Z component is not 0, so we can place it in the horizontal plane, perhaps near the origin. Okay, and now we will need to stretch it so that the measures correspond to what we have there. Okay, so let us inspect this drawing. So here we see that there are some measures. What we can do for this is like this. Perhaps we can look at it the other way. What we can do is to hide this cube and look for some measures here. Okay, so if we rotate the scene, we see, for instance, that the house has this shape, right? This is the outside, so perhaps we would like to place this point on the origin, right? So to that end, what we can do is we move the 3D cursor here, so we put it perhaps here, and we need to adjust the position. One could think that since we are our position is not perpendicular to the horizontal plane, then perhaps this cursor is not in the horizontal plane, but we can select here in view 3D cursor, and we see that it is actually on the horizontal plane, right? And we can double check it just by looking on from the side. Okay, so now what we would like to do is what we did earlier, to set the origin of this object to be at this point. So we set origin to 3D cursor. Okay, so this should be now the center of this, the origin of this object. So if we would like to move it, we can either move it like this, or we can just set the coordinates here, item, so 0, 0, like this. Okay, so we see that the x-axis goes in this direction, the y-axis goes in this direction. So perhaps we would like to rotate this so that we have the positive x like this and the negative x like this. So perhaps we want to rotate this 90 degrees, and that is very easy because we just having this object selected, we can just go here to item, transform, rotation, and around the z-axis 90 degrees. Okay, so we see that this is the positive x, this is the positive y-axis, and our origin for this floor plan will be in this top left. It could be placed also in the bottom left or in another corner. So now we need to adjust the dimensions. So we would like to stretch or scale this drawing in such a way that this point here 3 is at position 3.97 meters from the origin, right? So to that end, the easiest way is to create a reference. So we can, for instance, bring this plane to the origin, this one here. So we have the plane that we created earlier, although here the origin of this plane is not at the on the corner. So what we do is quickly we enter edit mode, we select this vertex, we go to mesh, snap, cursor to selected. Now we go to object mode, object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. This is what we discussed earlier, and it's not that easy. So now we have this position, the 0, 0, and we would like to make it set its width to 3.97 meters, right? So to that end, what we can do is to select this vertex, edge here, and set the Y position to, no, sorry, the X position to 3.97. Okay, this so the point that we selected on the image should go there. Okay, therefore we need to scale this thing, so we select this object and we edit it. We would like to scale. Okay, so we we scale it in both directions. The problem is that now the origin is no longer in the place where we wanted. So we will need to scale it. The problem here is that this plane is not very visible. So what we can do is to select it and increase a little bit its Z. If we increase it just a little bit, then it will be very visible, because this one has 0 coordinate Z. So by the way, I forgot to mention earlier that if you want to see the image on the plane, we need to be in this view mode, right? If you are here, you will not see it. This is the default one. So let's translate and scale this other this plane, so we can again translate it so that the origin is here, and then we need to keep scaling it, scaling it until this becomes of this size, still a little bit more. We translate it. We have the perhaps it would be more visible in another color. I don't know what's the we scale down a bit. This is perhaps the tedious part. And translate. It translates until it is like this. Okay, so more or less the reference is okay. So we can still place this corner in the origin. Okay, there we go. And now we look at this plane. We see that it is pretty much, we can still scale down a little bit. Wait, I'm scaling the wrong object down. But this other one disappears if I go here. So background has, okay, so the Z dimension was moved for this one. That was the problem. Okay, so this is already pretty good. We can translate a bit this big one. We can set the it's okay. All right, so now we can start making the walls. So before getting into that, there is an important functionality, which is the ability to set the camera in orthographic mode. So if we press number 7, we see that our view will be from the top, and the X and Y axis will be aligned with the horizontal and vertical dimensions of our screen. So we can start by making the walls. We can use this directly as our own I mean the starting point for the walls. So the first thing that we will do is to turn this into gray, giving it a better color. So we are in object mode. I think we can do it from here. We go to this tab, material properties, and we create a new material. This material, you can name it as you want, but here the important thing is to choose a base color, which we will take like a concrete color like this. And then we need to be able to set to see the lengths and the measures to appropriately set the size of this of every shape that we place here. So to that end, we need to enable another add-on, which is this 3D view measure it. If you select it, then you can see the measure lines. So to that end, we go to edit mode. We select, for instance, these two vertices, and then in view we can go to measure it tools, and with these two vertices selected we can hit segment here. So and then we need to select show. Okay, so to improve the flexibility, we can here set override and choose a color that is more visible. Okay, we can use arrows. Let me see. No, this is not. I think that what we need to do is to go here to configuration, take these arrows to each side. Both sides will be triangles, and then here we hit center align. Let's try with a different color, and I think that the next measurement that we create will go according to that configuration. So we hit again segment, we indeed have it with these triangles to each side. and the color is the one that we selected here. So there is this separation, I think, and this is something that the position of these arrows seems to be wrong. So now let us remove this measure. Here we can do it, and we can add it again. Let's see, segment, and we see that the triangles are now in the right positions. So the limitation may be that the position of this label cannot be adjusted automatically. We can indeed play with the configuration to place this in different positions. So for instance, here in the X we can control the position of the label, but this has to be done for each measure separately, right? You see that this one did not move, right? And this is a little bit tedious when you have many measurements, and this is perhaps the main disadvantage of using Blender for this task. We can also hide measurement units and use, for instance, centimeters, and only integers, right? So then this is what we have in the previous floor plan. Okay. So now that we have these measures here, what we can do is we make the view perpendicular, and we can now change the edges so that the measures are the ones that we want, which in this case are 20 centimeters. 20. If you press Control, you can have a thinner control of these dimensions, right? Or for instance, if you increase the zoom, right? So here we can this. So we zoom in, let's say. So perhaps we can still move the a little bit this large plane. So we select this one here. We can just move it a little bit here. Okay. So now we need to go from this point to this point. We want to make a wall. So what we do is we select this. This will be the seed for all the drawing, the entire floor plan. So once we have it selected, we enter edit mode, select this edge, and now we hit the E, which is extrude, right? And we see that it allows us to grow this thing. However, this can go in any direction, so it's more practical to hit here snap, right? And then it will go along this axis preferably. Okay, so you can of course set the position of this to be the desired one. So in this case it is 20 and this is 397, so we need to either set this length to 377 by, for instance, placing here one segment, or we can directly set the x coordinate of this edge here, right? So we can set it to 3.97. Okay. We can continue extruding for until 417, which is here. Okay, we can continue extruding 323 plus this, right? So it is 7.37.40, right? So 7.40. We can use this. The drawing is not perfect, the one that is underneath, by the way. Wait, 7.40. And we need to set this. I think it's easier if I just do it like this. Okay. Actually, this is up to the end of the wall, so we can even go to 7.20. 7.20 and then extrude again to 7.40. Okay, so I was looking at this position over here. Observe that here we forgot to create another vertex here, so it's not a problem. What we can do is to select these two vertices and we hit subdivide. So we see that it creates an edge here. We can move it to this point. So again, if we need to adjust the position, we can in this case create a segment, view segment. We see that it is 22, so what we can do is to select this vertex and move it, hitting pressing holding control like this. So now we can draw this wall. We can extrude this one down and so on. So we continue this we continue with this. Well, there is whenever you go too far, you just undo. Okay, so this is the general procedure here. So extruding and so on. And then sometimes what I prefer to do is to just adjust to find the shape, and then I place the measures, the segments, and that allows me to refine the measures, right? So here now I can adjust this point just by selecting this edge and so on. so unfortunately this this base drawing didn't have all the relevant measures, so I had to also go and measure myself. So then we would also want perhaps to create, indicate how this wall is. Here perhaps there's a window, right? So I'm going to draw a window. I take these two edges and subdivide in two parts. Okay, so I made with two divisions, so I made three segments, and what I can do here is to subdivide these two segments in to three parts as well. So now we have these faces. What I can do is, for instance, to color this in blue to indicate that it is a window, right? That is a glass. So to do that, we come to these material properties. Here we see that there's only one material. So what we have to do is to create a new material, right? And we assign it a different color. So for instance, blue. Okay. And once we did that, we need to hit assign, and it will become this face. I selected a face. It will become blue. Okay. You may keep the material that is in the top of the list. It will be the one used by default. So if now I add a plane, it will use this material here. So you can also play with that, right? Now it comes the issue of rendering and exporting. So to save this as a file, well, perhaps we want to don't have this background, so we remove it here. If you don't want to show up in the render, you also deactivate this camera. So what we need to do is to place the camera property, because it's not that easy. If we now just hit render image, you will see it just shows kind of a strange thing. So we need to place the camera properly. So to that end, what we do is to we duplicate this layout, and here what we do is to drag, having two views here. Okay, so the one on the left, we will choose the view of the camera. So active camera, this is what the camera sees. This is the field of view. So we need to adjust it here. So to that end, we need to make the camera visible. The camera is here. So if we are in object mode, we can select the camera, right? And we can move it. So if we move the camera, you see that what is on the left is also updated accordingly. So we don't want any snap here, so we want to move it freely, and we want it to point downwards, right? So here in item we have rotation. We can try with 0 and 0, so it points exactly down, and now we see that it points perfectly vertically downwards. But we need to adjust the size, so we go here to these output properties. We can choose this to be, for instance, twice if we want a large image, There are ways to export this as PDF and so on, but we will only be looking at exporting this in as an image format. So here you can adjust the size of the screen. So due to the dimensions, we perhaps prefer to transpose this. So we can put here 1080 and here 1920. So you see that it's now not landscape but in portrait mode. So we need to that more things fit here. So essentially what we need is to get the camera further away. So when the camera is further away, then more things fit in the image. Okay, so you can even adjust this with this property. Okay, so we move it like this. We can perhaps get it further down because we have just started the drawing, but this could be a good field of view. I forgot to say earlier that you can also change your view by playing with this image, this diagram here of the axis. So after we have this, we can check what happens if we hit render image. Okay, we see that the image is rendered, and still we have the something here that we added before. This is because this this camera is not deactivated, so we need to remove it from here. Try again. Okay, so now it's not. We just have the desired objects. So now let's adjust a few settings to improve the rendering. So here in this tab, object data properties, we can select the camera to be orthographic. We can that means that we need to move it probably. I'm not sure. Then here we can test with render image. Yes, we need to move it. So here we in view cameras, active camera. So we need to adjust the camera position here. This doesn't seem to be so once we selected the orthographic lens, we need to adjust this here to fit the entire drawing. We need to make sure that we adjust properly the X and Y positions as well. So this will be something like this. So now we go to render image and we see this. We have also selected the freestyle. So at some point here in render we select freestyle, and that also gives us more options here in the layers tab. So we have here freestyle, and we have multiple settings that we can adjust. Okay, so now when we hit render, we see this image, but we don't see the measures. Okay, so what should we do? We need to go here to well, we need to do two things. First, we need to render the measure. So here we have measure it tools. We need to go here to render and hit render. That will create sort of a layer with the measures, the measurements. And then we go to compositing here, and we need to say use nodes. We need to add here the both the measures and the image that we have rendered. Okay, so we should come to this compositing tab, and here we have render layers and composite. So we need to add a node which is an input node, which is an image. Okay, so in this image we will load the measure it output. So these are the segments with the measures, and we need also to add alpha over node which will combine. So here we have the render and here we have the measures. This goes here. We now connect this here and we hit render, and we see that we do have the measures over the drawing, and of course one may want to adjust the sizes, but this is I mean already working. We have already used most of the required functionality for this task, so we may need to perhaps go back to the layout and check. Yes, so this is expected, so we can add, for instance, this one from here to here. We do segment. We perhaps go to the last one. This is the tedious part. Here we can label these ones so that we know what they correspond. So this is one measure in a room, right? To locate them in this list, we can just hit this button, right, and to hide them, and we see to which one they correspond. But this is something that this software can still improve a bit. We can, for instance, move this measure to a side and see what happens. We can render again, and see render image, and we see the 460 is here. Perhaps we want to increase a bit the width. So the width can be, for instance, 3. Let's see, with 3. Okay, so we see all lines clearly now. We unfortunately observe that the sometimes the relative sizes of things don't match these two places. But well, this is the This is the we have already learned how to use Blender to make the walls, windows. We can make doors. Actually, we can make a door in a minute now. So to make a door, for instance, we can select these two edges, and we hit right click, subdivide 2. Okay, so this is now the door. We can further divide these two segments in the same way in 2. Okay, now we select this edge, and if we want to get rid of it, we press X and then delete edges. The same here, edges. So you can also hit dissolve when you want to merge different shapes, right? So you hit here dissolve, but well, depending on the special situation, it may have one effect or another. So now suppose that we want this to be of a different color. So what we can do is to add a material here, which we assign this, for instance, sort of a brown color, brownish, and then we assign, and then it's of that color. And then, for instance, we can make a circle, so or a segment of a circle. So if you look at this tool here, spin, extrude selected vertices in a circle around the cursor. So what we can do is to select this thing and mesh snap cursor to selected, and then we select this point, use this tool, and this thing appears. So we can just do something like this. We can do something like this, and then we have this point selected. We select this other point and hit F. F is as in fill. If you select two vertices and hit F, it fills the space with an edge. If you select multiple vertices, for instance here, and we hit F, you get a face. Okay, so actually I think we can even fill this, yeah, with a shape. So this is what we have learned. We can also move this, adjust the dimensions as always. This is the flexibility that this program offers. And I don't think I forget an important idea. It's mainly now about playing with the settings and the configuration. So one can also set the background, by the way. So if we go to the world, surface background color, and here we can choose something like white. Let's see what happens when we hit render image. Okay, we need to perhaps render here as well. Render image. Yes, so we see the white background. And now here you can save this image as image file, or in many other formats. So just as an idea, this is what the result of what I did. We see that all the I managed to place all the measures. Of course, sometimes the number shows up correctly. Other times it is a little bit overlapping the segment itself, and this can be of course fixed going one by one, playing with these numbers here, right? But I didn't want to do it, so that's a sort of a tedious task. That's why I think this is the main limitation of this software. But for the rest, it is perfectly functional. So this is all. I hope this tutorial is useful, at least for somebody. It's not a video intended to get 1 million views for sure, but it's a way of storing information that essentially I learned across many videos and websites, and also trying, of course. Okay, so as I said, I hope it was useful. I wish you all the best with Blender.